So while going through the final edit of this video, I found something just unbelievable, and I just can't believe it that they're not talking about it. And Metatron, who I debunk his debunking in this video, as well as Sabine Hosenfelder, as well as all these other scientists, aren't mentioning this pretty amazing fact that verifies that their SAR tomography technique does in fact work. And so I just could not believe it. I'm going to present it right now and then go on to the rest of the video. Okay, so this is the North Face Corridor, called the ScanPyramids North Face Corridor. And the reason is the ScanPyramids investigation found this, right? Using interesting techniques. By the way, this is from History for Granite YouTube. Okay, so this thing is basically 9 meters long, and it's 2 meters high. So a person could walk down this corridor and 2 meters wide. Okay, so it's not that big, but it hasn't been found until recently. Okay, and what's really interesting is they didn't endoscope this thing until 2023, and that's after the ScanPyramids group found it. Okay, and it's behind the chevron, as you see there, those weird chevrons. I saw that in the Great Pyramid. I was wondering what those chevrons were. I was there in November and I didn't know what that was. Great Pyramid is just unbelievable. I mean, the accuracy of it and everything. So ScanPyramids went to the chevron structure, went behind that, put in all these devices that I think I even saw some of the devices that were in there, or remnants of it. They had like the computers and such sitting around. And they were able to determine that, hey, there's something behind this weird chevron structure that you can see from the outside of the pyramid. And so they basically went and did this paper, okay, analyzing what's behind these chevrons. And they used kind of some interesting new techniques. I think it took even a couple of years, et cetera. So muon detectors, et cetera. Okay, so the interesting point is they did all this and released their report in 2023. Okay, so ScanPyramids, they're getting all the credit for this because they said, hey, there's something back there. Why don't we stick an endoscope down this little hole? Like, I don't know why they didn't do that before, but it took these guys basically doing all this analysis, non-destructive techniques analysis, and then they're like, okay, we'll stick an endoscope down there, although these are just tombs, don't worry about it. And so this is what they found. Okay, so there's the chevrons. They stick this endoscope back there because they mapped it and they found that corridor. So they called it the ScanPyramids North Face Corridor, right? The interesting point is that came out in 2023, okay? And to much acclaim, and they said, oh, it's amazing scientific work, and it is. And they put the endoscope in there and they confirmed that there is a corridor, okay? And it just ends in kind of like a wall here. They don't know what's past it, but why would you have a corridor that just ends right there? Okay, so that's interesting, right? Great. Hadn't seen this in 4,500 years. Amazing. Good job, guys. And I cover in this video that just last week, 18 March 2025, they made more non-destructive testing techniques. So now they combined it with other tests besides the muon detectors. They used image fusing. I talk about it in the video, explain it in depth. So keep watching if you're interested in that. And basically they confirmed that the corridor is there. Okay, great. And they confirmed that the other techniques work, which also furthers the strength of the recent SAR tomography claims. But now here's where it gets really interesting, okay? So this is from, look at this paper, received 7 October 2020. So 3 years before the ScanPyramids report releases. This is from the same guys, right? Biondi and Malanga, who just released their controversial claims that everyone calls BS, Metatron disputes. So this article, synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography detects undiscovered high-resolution internal structures of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And so they're claiming, using the same SAR tomography technique, that they can look into the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay? They explain how the technique works. They show all the math. I already talked about this, based off Doppler shift of, so motion of seismic waves, essentially, that are on the surface. Again, if you're curious about how this stuff works, you can look at my first video. Links to all of my videos on this are in the description. Okay, and here's where my mind just blew, okay, doing the editing for this video. And I can't believe more people aren't talking about it. but figure 16 in that report from 2020, okay, is a SAR image in magnitude representation of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, okay? And if you look, if I zoom in on this, what do you see right there? You see their chevrons, right? Their V chevrons. And what the F is this? Is a corridor, man. There's a corridor right there that comes directly from the chevrons, going back as a corridor. Looks approximately the same size, right? I mean, 2 meters by 2 meters high, roughly. And they actually, if you read the report, it says they can get resolution down to a few meters. So they draw this corridor, about the same size that they actually found in 2023. I was just like mind blown, you know, and if you wonder why there's so much hoopla going on, why there was like 700 people at that conference, I think it's, you know, for this reason that, I mean, they confirmed this corridor was there and about the same size and dimensions. You know, they show it ending, but why would you have a corridor just ending? That doesn't make sense. So it seems like it should continue on. So if you can use that technology to determine this corridor's in there, then what are the chances that the rest of this is actually in there, that this is what the internals of the Great Pyramid actually looks like? Because we don't really have any clue, right? Ground penetrating radar doesn't go through that rock. You know, you're not even getting 30 meters of penetration. They could barely use GPR on this, right? And it's just not even that big. It was like a few meters. And I explained it again in this video talking about the frequencies. So I just had to put that in right at the beginning. I mean, that is just amazing. And I think, yeah, this technology could work. I mean, it could work. Look, if they can prove it here on the Great Pyramid, and they can prove it for the dam, Mosul Dam, and at Grand Sasu Laboratory, then I think it's amazing. So I want to just put this at the beginning of the video, and now we'll continue on with the rest of the video. Wow, amazing. There's been a ton of controversy on the alleged Giza pyramid scan, where they could scan underneath the pyramids using SAR tomography. That would be a new technique. And I've got emails saying, hey, you got to check out these videos. It's basically been debunking videos made by large YouTubers. I got pointed to a video by Metatron. He speaks Italian, apparently, and he makes a video debunking the claims, essentially, and we'll go through and show that his argument is just completely wrong, actually, just not correct. Sabine Hosenfelder also made a video, which again is just a ridiculous argument. We'll go through that as well. And she calls it a 9 out of 10 on her BS meter. But as you'll see, she says that the technique could actually work. So the science is there, but she just doesn't believe it. And I'm sure didn't even go through the actual conference at all. As well as a new paper just published last week on the original scan pyramids into the Great Pyramid at Giza. And it further supports that this technique, listening to vibrations in the ground, so acoustic Doppler tomography, could actually work. So thanks for being here. Let's go through it. Chris Lehto, welcome to Lehto Files. Okay, this is YouTuber Metatron. He has almost 1 million subscribers, and this debunking video has almost 250,000 views already. So I think most people are referencing this or Sabine Hosenfelder. So let's go through and see what he actually says here.
Returning to the technical explanation, it tells us that these SAR, the way they're using it, are transmitting impulses, specifically electromagnetic impulses, to the Earth in order to receive echoes of the sounds and vibration underneath the ground.
Okay. I can tell he probably hasn't ever heard of SAR technology. We used it in the fighter world all the time. It's a targeting technique, and it can see through weather, et cetera. I'm pretty sure, if I had to guess, that's probably where it actually came from. The technology is from military applications. So my guess is he's never heard of it or used it before. Okay, but he's going to give some technical explanation on it. But he does give a reasonable explanation. Okay, so it is SAR satellites from space, which is pretty amazing because it gives them a huge aperture. I explain all this in my previous videos. You can find those linked in the description. But basically, what the scientists are arguing is you can get a much better accuracy. So sub-millimeter, they say 0.01 millimeter Doppler shift, and they're listening and getting acoustic changes under the ground because sound travels differently through different materials, right? So it'll travel faster through solids than it will through liquids, than it will through gases. And if your material is warmer, it'll actually travel faster through warmer material. I think that's because the molecules are pushing against each other faster, right? You have denser energy. And so that allows the vibrations to actually travel through it. It's wave mechanics. And so that's what they're actually doing is they're using electromagnetic waves that they're sending. It's active to listen to passive seismic vibrations under the ground. And that's their main argument. So he does get that correct.
But now let's talk about the validation of this technique, which he talks about on 1 hour, 44 minutes in. Now, up to this point, I'm not liking the presentation one bit, but I want to be fair. As you know, that's what I always do.
I love this. So he says, okay, I'm not biased at all up until this point, but I'm biased.
And one of the things that is often used against these gentlemen when it comes to this new technology that they use, which of course has been seen with a certain level of skepticism, is the fact that professional scientists say, well, you need to test this tech with other structures to see if it works first, and then you should apply it under the pyramids. But
okay, and yeah, we don't need professional scientists to tell us this. Okay, so this is just obvious. I think in today's age, we rely too much on professional experts, right? Professional scientists, if you will, and we believe everything they say instead of going and looking at the source data and using our own brains. I think if anything, you've watched my channel over the last 4 years now, it is learn, please, to think for yourselves and don't just take the expert opinions because experts have always been proven in the past to be incorrect. They use groupthink, they will believe the paradigm at all costs, and they will cast people out that disagree with them, right? As we've seen, and I'll show at the end about cosmology, how ridiculous our current cosmological argument is.
They claim that they did. So 1 hour, 45 minutes, as you see, it talks about the tunnels that are in the Gran Sasso d'Italia, and they say that they were able to use this technology to see correctly pathways and tunnels that we know are there through our topographic mapping.
Okay, so this will honestly be a huge verification of the technique, right? And we'll ultimately have to see from the final paper, it hasn't been released yet, is this accurate, right? Could they actually scan into this mountain, the Gran Sasso Physics Laboratory, and the dam that you'll see here in a second? And that would be a huge verification of this technology, and that would immediately show that it does actually work. So that is correct. But let's see how he brushes this off in his debunking.
As you can see here and here, this says analysis of the vibrations. And then as the second geolocation where they tried to use this technology to see if it worked, he talks about the dam of Mosul, once again making claims that the tunnel that is found inside this dam was in fact correctly identified by their scan methodology.
Okay, again, yeah, huge claim, right? And this would verify that the technology actually works, that the technique works, that you can use SAR from space to listen to acoustical vibrations in the Earth. Because we do that, right? We use seismographs that I showed in the previous video to triangulate where earthquakes start from. So we use this previously. And you'll see in a further paper that I'll show here in a minute that they actually did it on the pyramids back with ScanPyramids technique.
As indicated by this picture, as you can see, there is this long blue line would correspond exactly to the tunnel that we do find underneath the dam. And then, as you can see, these areas that appear red, which I imagine by watching this, it means they vibrate more.
Okay, and again, where he just puts this in where they vibrate more is what he's talking about. It's not vibrating more, it's how fast the wave is actually traveling through the material. That's the difference.
Would be equivalent to the turbines that are found underneath. All of this is interesting, but the problem with this is that it's still not enough, in my opinion, to justify or even validate the ability of these scans to correctly interpret and receive echoes and data from 648 meters underneath the ground. In fact, 1,200 meters, as they also claim that they found structures, since these do not appear to be scans that occur at the same level below.
Okay, so that's his main argument, right? Based on his, I don't know if he has a science background or not, but he says there, in his opinion, right, it's not enough to validate or verify that they can see actually 1,200 meters under the ground or 648 meters under the ground, right? That's what he says right there. And let's hear his reasoning for this.
Below ground zero as what they claim they have been able to see underneath the pyramids in the Giza Plateau. And unfortunately, when it comes to all of these fannings and areas that were scanned, he never provides an altitude. He never provides any information that could say, yes, but we were able to actually find precise scanning, say, 200 meters underground. He does not mention one time how deep these scans were able to successfully detect data.
Okay, so this is just amazing to me. And at the beginning, Metatron says that he's fluent in Italian and he watched the whole thing meticulously so that you don't have to, right? That was his big argument. So let's go to the actual conference, the time that he brought up. Okay, so I'm not fluent in Italian, although I did live there for almost 3 years. I should know a lot more, and I should speak Portuguese, and I should speak better Spanish. But that being said, I think you'll be able to see that he clearly states what Metatron says he doesn't. Right? Let's check it out.
Tranquilli. Vi mostro solamente un paio di esempi dove noi abbiamo applicato la tecnica del radar ad apertura sintetica versione fononica.
Okay, so yeah, I could even understand that. Italian didn't even need the subtitles. Basically, they applied their technique of synthetic aperture radar phonica, he says, so acoustic sound, if you will, to this mountain. We'll see in a second.
Per osservare, ad esempio, delle grosse infrastrutture che noi abbiamo sul nostro territorio nazionale, che è il laboratorio del Gran Sasso.
Okay, so he applied it. Again, I could even understand that Italian. Hopefully you can too, if you want to practice. They applied the technique to their own national laboratory, which is on their national land, Gran Sasso Laboratory.
Allora, il laboratorio del Gran Sasso è un laboratorio di fisica che si trova a circa 1400 metri di profondità.
Okay, and he says it very clearly right there, okay, that the physics laboratory is located about 1,400 meters of a depth. Okay, he says it clearly right there. 1,405 meters. Clearly, even I could understand.
Di profondità se misurato dall'apice del Gran Sasso, quindi dal corno grande.
Okay, and he says, as measured from the top of the Gran Sasso, so from the large horn of the apex. So now, I guess we can give Metatron the benefit of the doubt that he's not talking about a slant range, like a slant range into the mountain. But you have to remember the Gran Sasso Physics Laboratory is a neutrino detection facility, among other things, I'm guessing. And so what they're doing is isolating the neutrino detectors from everything else in the environment, right? So putting it under as much rock as possible. And what they say right there is it's under 1,400 meters of rock, clearly. So I don't know what else you need to say. He says it clearly right there. And if we go to the dam, I mean, it doesn't say how many meters the tunnel is actually underneath the dam, but I'm pretty sure we can find this out open source, right? It's online. So I think they're pretty open in what they're stating there. And he says very clearly in clear Italian that everyone can hear is 1,400 meters under rock. And he even gives a third example, which is basically the San Gotardo Mountains. There's a tunnel system, okay, inside the mountains that they can also allegedly detect. So I think you can make an argument that these scans are incorrect or that they're not making the correct interpretation of the scans. Obviously, you can't see that it's exactly a spiral staircase and on these 8 columns, et cetera. I mean, I think those are valid arguments that maybe they're interpreting the scans incorrectly, but just saying that they don't see 1,400 meters into the ground when you're obviously biased, I think it's just a terrible, it's a debunking, essentially. It looks straight like a debunking video. So yeah, I'd say Metatron's video, thanks for sending it to me, but it's frustrating that he'll get 250,000 views with almost no background, never used SAR technology, and I'll get like 20 or 30,000, right? And I've used SAR technology in the past, and have a background in physics and know this stuff, and yet, yeah, anyway, gets much more. So now let's check out Sabine Hosenfelder's debunking of this. I do like most of her videos. I think she needs to be way more critical and still spouts a lot of the BS cosmological models that are just ridiculous. We'll talk about one comeback I have, but she has 1.67 million subscribers, and this video has 1 million views, almost 1 million views in one day. So this is a huge video, viral, and you'll see here kind of, yeah, again, disagree with a lot of things.
Actually worked. Why isn't anyone else using it? Finally, the idea that the Egyptians would base a structure as heavy as the pyramids on something resembling pillars seems completely crazy to me. Let me also add some words on the two guys who've led these studies. Filippo Biondi previously worked at the Department of Electronic Engineering in Glasgow, but no longer works there.
Okay, so then she attacks the two guys, right? So not even the physics. I doubt she even looked at the conference to actually see their actual full proposal. I'm sure she didn't. But then she does an attack here saying that, yeah, this guy doesn't work there. And then look what she says to the next guy.
He's applied for a patent for the technology. The other author is Corrado Malanga, who, according to his own website, was a university researcher at the Department of Chemistry and Industrial Chemistry of the University of Pisa. He also has a theory of global alien interference that explains alien abductions as follows. Quote, the abductee in the bottom right part is programmed using an alien active memory, and in the meantime, they momentarily take out his sole component, the little red ball.
So she uses this against him, and I watched, I was like, damn, man, this guy's legit. Like, he's got courage, man, going out there and writing something like that. And like, no one will even touch the abductee phenomenon, right? I'm sure there's hundreds, maybe thousands of abductees that watch my channel, you know, who won't even tell their family about it. And this dude's out there writing. So I was like, dang, man, I need to try and get this guy on the show. So I don't know. She hammers him here as saying that this is ridiculous, but yeah, I think it's awesome, man. Takes a lot of courage to go and do that, to write anything about abductees and to propose any proposal for what the experience is about or what that whole abductee thing is going on. So let's hear how she finishes it.
In summary, this story gets a 9 out of 10 on my bullshit meter. I'm not giving a 10 out of 10 because maybe this Doppler method isn't entirely crazy and just needs more work, but I'm pretty sure what they measure is just noise.
Okay, so she just said there that she's a theoretical physicist, right? Which means, are you really a physicist or are you theoretically a physicist? She says that the physics could work, actually. But she calls it a BS 9 out of 10 because she thinks it's just noise, which we'll see, right? It really depends on the verification. Like I mentioned, is if this technique actually works, then we will see it in the future for sure, without a doubt, because this was found on an Italian satellite. And now that it's gone widely across the whole internet, yeah, there's no way anyone's going to be able to suppress this technology if it works. So we'll figure that out. So my whole point on this is that not that it's 100% accurate, right? That there are for sure 8 pillars below the pyramid and the spiral pathways, et cetera, right? It could be some weird compression in the rock. Maybe the weight of all that limestone, you know, piled up into a pyramid structure makes these kind of acoustical pressures under the ground, et cetera. But we shouldn't just write off the technology. I think going out the door and just saying that this is BS is also the wrong way to do it. I'm excited that the technology could work, but is there really these 8 pillars going down 648 meters into these 80-meter boxes? It's the Hall of Amenti. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a stretch. But if this technology does work, I mean, imagine what we can do. You can scan pyramids all over the place. We can look under the ground. We can look into Göbekli Tepe. We can look in the Area 51, right? Because especially the deserts of Nevada, they're very similar, right? It's going to be these flat, hard rock, soft, you know, maybe soft soil deserts, but it's not going to be like a city. I got one comment saying, okay, well, now they can see the tunnels under Gaza, etc. And I think, no, anywhere you're going to have a lot of noise, such as from a city, a lot of ground traffic, cars, people walking, etc., it's going to be very difficult. But if you're out in the desert, right, or you're looking at the Giza Plateau, where there's pretty much nothing there, then I think you are going to be able to scan down into the ground. It's going to be pretty amazing. Like Göbekli Tepe, I've been there, or Mount Nemrut, I've been there as well. There's nothing out there. So I think if this technology works, man, it's going to really open up a whole new frontier and looking into ancient structures or what's under the ground. So I'm really excited about it. Now, this is a very interesting scientific report that just published 18 March 2025, so just last week. And this seems to confirm a lot of the tech that they are claiming for the recent ScanPyramids. So this is in Scientific Reports, confirmation of the ScanPyramids North Face Corridor in the Great Pyramid of Giza using multimodal image fusion from 3 non-destructive testing techniques. So let's go through what that means. So from the abstract, while non-destructive testing measurements have been reported individually for archaeological surveys of cultural heritage structures, only a few studies to date have attempted to combine these non-destructive testing images by means of image fusion. So that's what they're saying is novel in this, is they're using older techniques or techniques that have been used before, but never before have they been combined into one image. So using image fusion. So in this article, novel multimodal image fusion results from 3 different non-destructive testing techniques were collected at the chevron located in the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's Khufu's pyramid, and I was just there in November. It was unbelievable. The Great Pyramid really is the real deal. That thing's unbelievable. The recent scans, though, were under Khafre's pyramid, and that they called on the tour the Chinese pyramid because it wasn't constructed to nearly the same precision, and that's the middle one of the 3 large pyramids. So the chevron that they're talking about is an assembly of limestone blocks located in front of the recently confirmed ScanPyramids North Face Corridor. So that's this SP-NFC they keep referring to, which had been previously hidden for 4,500 years. Under the research activities of the ScanPyramids mission, 3 profiles located on the chevron were selected to explain multimodal image fusion in detail and highlight its usefulness in archaeology. The techniques employed in this study include ground-penetrating radar, ultrasonic testing, and electrical resistivity tomography. So ground-penetrating radar that has 15 to 30 meters range that I covered before. Ultrasonic testing, so this is using sound. Phonics is what we saw earlier, right, that they mentioned in the recent pyramid scan. And electrical resistivity, say that, tomography. So basically what they recently did, which is the controversial claim, is that they combined acoustics with some sort of tomography found through Doppler shift. That was the recent claims. Okay, so the chevron is located in the north face of Khufu's pyramid. I remember seeing this crazy structure, and apparently they focused in on that area and found a large corridor behind it. So they talk about ground-penetrating radar. They say it's been proven reliable technique for blocky structures. However, the attenuation of electromagnetic waves in this medium is higher compared to continuum structures, which limited the penetration depth for all the antennas used, in particular for the ones with the higher frequencies. So they couldn't really use ground-penetrating radar that well. So they talk about ultrasonic testing. In ultrasonic testing, elastic waves are emitted into a material and reflected at interfaces between materials. The amount of energy reflected at each such boundary is high if the acoustic's impedance is different. And this is what the Italian researchers are claiming, is that different materials transfer sound at different rates, and they're able to measure this. I think we even saw some of these devices inside the pyramid. So there was like these weird devices inside each of the rooms, and supposedly they were for some scan. I believe it was for pyramid scan. And then finally, they talk about electrical resistivity tomography, and that is a ground-based geophysical technique that employs a current source to investigate the electrical properties of the subsurface. So basically, they're putting in a small electric current, and they're measuring the actual resistivity, right? So you calculated following Ohm's law, resistance is converted into apparent resistivity by accounting for a geometric factor. So think about that. They're able to impart a small electrical charge and then measure it to see which materials are inside the structure. Okay, so you have the ground penetrating radar here, and you can barely see the corridor down there. And then you have the ultrasonics. Okay, you can see the chevrons pretty clearly there, but can't really see a corridor, maybe a little mark there. And they fused it together and combined the electrical resistivity tomography. I can't really tell what that shows, but you can still see the chevrons there. And they fused it into this final image. You can see the chevrons there, and now you can clearly see the corridor. And so that is the final fused image. But even that, they say the final fused images should have sufficient contrast to highlight the features of all modalities and be free of artifacts. This was used in this study to determine the quality and usefulness of the final fused images and adjust fusion parameters as presented in section 3.5 as necessary. Okay, they said the final performed step interpretation was using human intelligence. Progress in artificial intelligence offers opportunities in the future, they say. Okay, and then finally, using these fused images, they are able to actually determine that there is the north face corridor is right in here, you see? So according to this report, they're able to confirm that there was a north face corridor inside that no one had known about for 4,500 years using non-destructive techniques. So they're using acoustical vibrations and they're using electrical resistivity, as well as ground penetrating radar that they said didn't seem to help that much, actually. Okay, and this is the actual ScanPyramid north-facing corridor that the Italian researchers showed in their Giza conference. So according to them, they were also able to detect this corridor in the Great Pyramid. So according to this recent article, they say a novel application of multimodal image fusion using measurements from 3 different non-destructive testing techniques, namely ground penetrating radar, ultrasonic testing, and electrical resistivity tomography, taken at a select location of the so-called chevron at Khufu's pyramid, is presented. The research described highlights new possibilities for improved data visualization and interpretation based on these non-destructive testing techniques that are individually already used in the field of archaeology. So these techniques are already being used. What they're doing is they're combining it, fusing it, and now they're able to get even more information and see deeper into these structures. They say the addition of electrical resistivity tomography in this study is novel and adds volumetric information which was not previously available. The distribution of electrical resistivity allows confidently confirming the presence of the ScanPyramids north face corridor. So that's an exciting paper using basically similar techniques, right? You're using acoustic techniques combined with resistivity, how electromagnetic energy, sound travels through different materials at different rates, and combining that, you're able to see into this structure, and they found the north face corridor, right? Pretty amazing. You also saw there that reading these scans takes a little more experience and expertise than just some random dude on the internet. Here's where my mind just blew, okay, doing the editing for this video, and I can't believe more people aren't talking about it, but figure 16 in that report from 2020, okay, is a SAR image in magnitude representation of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, okay? And if you look, if I zoom in on this, what do you see right there? You see their chevrons, right? Their V chevrons. And what the F is this? Is a corridor, man. There's a corridor right there that comes directly from the chevrons, going back as a corridor, looks approximately the same size, right? I mean, 2 meters by 2 meters high, roughly. And they actually, if you read the report, it says they can get resolution down to a few meters. So they draw this corridor, about the same size that they actually found in 2023. I was just like mind blown, you know, and if you wonder why there's so much hoopla going on, why there was like 700 people at that conference, I think it's, you know, for this reason that, I mean, they confirmed this corridor was there and about the same size and dimensions. You know, they show it ending, but why would you have a corridor just ending? That doesn't make sense. So it seems like it should continue on. Okay, and finally, I think what's happening is we're realizing that our standard models, our standard scientific models, definitely need a rewrite and an update. So what's the chance our current archaeological model is incorrect? I'd say it's very high. The chance is very high that we are incorrect in our ancient history knowledge. I don't think the pyramids were tombs. I really don't. I was in them. They didn't seem like any tomb. And we still don't know when they were made or who really made them. There's absolutely no records going through all of Egypt. So as far as our scientific standard models, I think they're obviously wrong in many places. And Sabine Hosenfelder is one of those people who calls a critical eye and says, hey, something is wrong, but she will not go and look and challenge the actual fundamental assumptions. And here's just one thing I found. I'm finishing a book. Hopefully it'll be publishing this summer. And I found really interesting data on our current cosmological model. And so this is a brief note on cosmic ages and the great mismatch. So check this out. So cosmic time scale comparison. So the Earth, as far as we know, is 4.6 billion years old. That's probably the best number we have since we're here and we can measure using radioactive dating, etc. Well, then it gets kind of interesting because we say that the universe, based on our Big Bang model, which if you've watched my channel, you know I disagree with this. The current model says that the universe is 13.7 billion years old, right? And people like Brian Greene and Sean Carroll, Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about how this is some really long time. Like we can't even imagine 13.7 billion years. Okay, but now what they skip over and they never mention is what is the age of a galaxy? How long do galaxies last or live? And if you look in our standard cosmological model, and this is actually what I found doing my own research, is that it's actually 10 to the 13 or 10 to the 14 years. So that's 10 to 100 trillion years, which makes sense, right? If our star lives 10 billion years and red dwarf stars live for trillions of years, doesn't it make sense that galaxies could live for many trillions of years? I mean, it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And then if you look at the actual universe, what does the standard model say how long the universe will last? They say 10 to the 100 years. That's a Google number. So that's 10 with 100 zeros. They say that's how long the universe will last. Meanwhile, galaxies last 100 trillion years. Think about that. So imagine we take that and see how ridiculous this number is. Cosmic calendar comparison. So if we compress 10 to 100 years into one calendar year, right? 365 days. You probably heard this for the dinosaurs and how long humanity's been around. Okay. So if we do that with the age of the universe, then how far along are we? Like the current moment right now, 13.7 billion years. And if you look, the current moment is 0.0084 zeros and then a 5 into the first day. Right into the first day. So that's 4.3 times 10 to the minus 83 seconds into the year. So that's not even a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second. That's not even a Planck number of a Planck number into a second, the first second, right? So basically it's ridiculous. So it's just ridiculous to even make the argument that the Earth is 1/4 the age of the entire universe. And it's ridiculous to say that the universe is only 13.7 billion years old when in the same model you say that galaxies are 100 trillion years old and that the universe will last 10 to the Google, right? It just makes absolutely zero sense. It's like having a million-page long book and then saying that, oh, yeah, it started, we're just at the first word of the book. Like it doesn't even make sense. It's completely ridiculous. And they skip over this. They skip over this fact that in the standard model they say galaxies last tens to 100 trillion years, which does make sense. So according to this, we haven't even pressed start, and we're at the not even the beginning of the entire universe. Just shows the anthropologic principle, right? That we think we're the center of everything, and of course, we're at the very beginning of the universe, and that's ridiculous, right? And when the JWST looks further back in time, they say back in time, it's seeing fully formed galaxies, right? Galaxies that can live for 10 to 100 trillion years, and yet are fully formed, and yet they just started. So the standard model, at least of cosmology, is ridiculous. Sabine Hosenfelder notes this, but still won't go far enough to claim that the Big Bang may be incorrect or we have some fundamental issues. And I think the same thing's happening in archaeology, and we're going to find through new technology and new techniques and open-minded thinking that maybe there is something under the pyramids. At any rate, the technology could be valid. It certainly looks physically possible, and it just seems like the interpretation may be up for debate here, but very exciting stuff. Thank you for watching. If you watched my channel for 4 years, I recommend thinking for yourself, using critical thinking. Our science institutions have basically failed us over the last several decades. They argue that there's no possible chance of extraterrestrial life, no chance of non-human intelligence. I think this is all incorrect. They say there hasn't been any ancient civilizations, right, past the Egyptians, past 5,000 years, and then we find Göbekli Tepe miraculously, and that pushed all the numbers back. And they say the universe only started 13.7 billion years ago, and I think this is a ridiculous argument if you just look at their own numbers. So I think we're in the information age, and over the next few years, especially with artificial intelligence and decentralized information flow, like you're watching me direct, right? You're not going through mainstream media, mainstream science. I think we're going to have huge breakthroughs. So thank you so much to these Italians going out there and making these incredible claims. We'll see what comes of it. And thank you for watching. Please hit the like button and share this video. It really helps. You can buy the merch. That also helps, and support on patreon.com/Chris Lehto. Definitely couldn't do it without you guys' support. Check out our sister channel, UAP Society Weekly News Show, and come to the Lehto Files Discord, chat about all this stuff. Hopefully I'll put all the links in the description if I don't forget. Thanks for all your help. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.